Have you ever noticed that some people start intermittent fasting and they have less food noise and less cravings? Meanwhile, others, maybe you too, do exactly the same thing and end up being obsessed with food, overeating during their eating windows, and maybe even binge eating. So what's going on? How can intermittent fasting work for some people and completely backfire for others? Let's explore it in this video. I personally experienced both sides. There was a time when intermittent fasting made my relationship with food much worse. But today I use a shorter overnight fasting window occasionally for its health benefits. I will show you that my relationship with food made the difference. And I will also reveal how one of my clients with 20 years of yo-yo dieting and overeating history lost 16 kilos without deprivation using intermittent fasting. But first, we had to prepare her body for intermittent fasting and also change her relationship with food so that intermittent fasting wouldn't trigger binge eating. I'm Rita May and I help you outgrow your food issues such as emotional eating, binge eating, food obsession, and yo-yo dieting, and help you become the version of you who doesn't feel controlled by food. Many years ago, when I still struggled with food obsession and binge eating tendencies, intermittent fasting seemed like a great idea. When you are still in that restrict and overeat cycle, it seems so much easier to just not eat and then eat a large portion of food than try to eat in moderation all the time. Right? What I tried was to fast for 16 hours and eat for 8 hours, and I did it by skipping breakfast. And it worked for a few months. I lost a bit of weight, but then things started to gradually go in the wrong direction. I started to have cravings and started to crave foods that I usually didn't even care about. And more often, I started to feel out of control. And it kind of felt like I was just surviving for 16 hours and then living for 8 hours. I was gradually finding that I was eating a bit more here, snacking a bit more there, overeating sometimes, and then justifying it that, oh, I will just fast longer tomorrow. And after a while, as soon as I started to eat, I had this huge appetite and I just couldn't stop eating. Then I started to swing between these two states of absolutely starving and feeling stuffed. And it's not a good feeling, and it's extremely similar to the experience I had before when I was stuck in the restrict and binge cycle. So of course I stopped fasting. The problem was that I was still restricting. I didn't do intermittent fasting for its health benefits. I did it simply just to lose weight. And I was still in the dieting mentality, so I tried to eat less even during the eating window. And fasting only added another layer of restriction. And it pushed my body to its limits, and obviously it started the cravings and the binge urges. And it's not just my experience. Researchers actually raised concerns about using intermittent fasting for people who had binge eating or disordered eating history. And when you think about it, it makes sense, because one of the most common approaches to recover from binge eating is consistent, regular eating. Why? Because when the body feels safe and consistently fed, the urge to overeat and the cravings and the food noise decrease. But when the body perceives scarcity and uncertainty, it ramps up the hunger signals, the craving, and the food noise. So you eat more. I explained how this works in this video and also explained how to get out of this pattern. So watch this video after this video. It's simply biology. Your body is designed to protect you from starvation. It wants you to survive. It doesn't know that you are dieting. It only perceives that there isn't enough food or you don't get food consistently. So it drives up your hunger signals, the cravings, and the food noise, so you get more food. So the problem is often not intermittent fasting itself, but what happens during that eating window. Because many people, like I did, eat too little during the eating window, and then the body doesn't really respond to the fasting window, but it responds to the consistent underfueling and not enough food in the long term. And that's why the survival brain urges you to eat more with the hunger signals, the cravings, and the food noise. And also research consistently shows that meal skipping increases cravings, and when you eat irregularly during the day, overeating in the evening is very common too. But then why do some people say that intermittent fasting reduces their food noise and food cravings? This is where it gets interesting, because you can find on YouTube or Reddit or other forums people genuinely saying that their food noise, emotional eating, food obsession, cravings significantly decreased when they did intermittent fasting. And then also you can find the same evidence on the same forums saying that they started binge eating, their food cravings became much worse, and they became obsessed with food. So how can it be? In my opinion, they have a different relationship with food. Let me explain. There are two very different groups of people. The first group is the chronic dieter. So this person spent years trying to control food. They dieted, they restricted, they started over every Monday. They promised they would be better tomorrow. They may have issues with binge eating or emotional eating or food obsession. For this person, intermittent fasting, like it was for me, is just another way of restricting food, right? It's another food rule, another diet. And this can easily trigger the restrict, overeat, or binge cycle that they've been anyway stuck for many years. So if your brain already tends towards scarcity, food obsession, binge eating, emotional eating, the last supper eating, when you think that tomorrow I start the diet again, so I eat today whatever I want before I start the diet. So all these tendencies, if you already have intermittent fasting, will just add another layer of restriction to this. And it can make your relationship with food even worse. So these are the people who have a bad experience with intermittent fasting. But then there is the other group who has a positive experience with fasting. And this group is the constant grazer group. Because many emotional eaters don't binge eat. Actually, they just graze all day, snacking all the time, picking food here and there. And they just think about food. What should I eat? When should I eat? Should I eat? Should I have a snack? Should I not have a snack? And it goes on all day. For them, a structure can actually reduce this food noise and cravings. Because instead of making hundreds of food decisions every day, they have now clear boundaries. I start eating at noon, I stop eating at 8, and there is no decision fatigue anymore. And it's not necessarily a metabolic effect for them, it's more like a psychological simplification effect for this group. And I would also like to mention hormones, because intermittent fasting actually works better for men because they don't have the monthly hormonal cycle. Women's menstrual cycle can be greatly affected by fasting. Many women lose their period when they have longer fasting windows, and it's not good, right? Also, fasting increases cortisol, so during perimenopause and menopause, when women are less stress resistant due to hormonal changing, fasting can have a negative effect. So why intermittent fasting works for some people and not for others? It depends on their relationship with food and their history with disordered eating, and also on their hormones, right? In my opinion, if you have binge eating history or disordered eating history, you shouldn't start with intermittent fasting, because as I explained, it will just make the situation worse, right? First, you need to stabilize or repair your metabolism and change your relationship with food, and then you can use a shorter, like 12 hours overnight fast for its health benefits, or even for losing weight. But you still need to listen to your body and trust the signals that it's giving you. And if you are a constant grazer, some structure that intermittent fasting provides may be beneficial for you, but don't be obsessed with it. Doing something imperfectly that you can sustain is much better than trying to do it perfectly and not being able to sustain it, and maybe leading to some disordered patterns of binging or overeating. This means you don't need to stress about the small details. If you sometimes eat a bit outside of your eating window, that's fine. If some days you are hungrier and then you have a shorter fast, that's also fine. Listen to your body. And if you have more cravings or you feel hungrier some days, you can just take a break, especially before your period. You don't have to be so perfectionist about it. And this is exactly what I recommended to one of my clients after changing her relationship with food and repairing her metabolism after 20 years of yo-yo dieting and the restricting overeating cycle. First, we stabilized her metabolism with regular eating and some light exercise. She also learned to cope with her feelings without food, and she learned to relate to stress differently. She also learned to eat her favorite foods in moderation instead of restricting them and then overeating them. After she stopped her dieting roller coaster, had a healthy relationship with food, and kept her weight stable for weeks, she was ready for intermittent fasting. But she didn't start it with a huge fasting window. First, she just ate her breakfast a bit later, because previously she ate breakfast before she took her child to the kindergarten. Now she ate her breakfast when she came back. And I also asked her to not stress about the tiny details that she heard about intermittent fasting on famous podcasts that she liked to listen to, and then trying to stick to these tiny little details. I just told her, don't stress about the tiny details. When you're hungry, eat. When you feel stable, then you fast. And she did that. She felt great, and she lost 16 kilos without deprivation. And she managed to keep the weight off even during indulgent holidays. Why? Because first, she changed her relationship to food. She didn't diet anymore. She could eat her favorite foods in moderation without overdoing it. And she also ate enough during the eating window. And also, very importantly, she stopped using food as an emotional crutch and learned how to eat intuitively. And in this case, intermittent fasting was just a tool to lose weight. And I knew that it would work for her because it worked for me. After I changed my relationship with food, I stopped the dieting, the restricting and overeating cycle, learned to eat enough food and decoupled my mood from food. A 12 hours overnight fasting worked for me too. I would love to hear about your experience. Have you ever tried intermittent fasting? Did it work for you? Did it decrease food noise and cravings, or started to have more cravings, more food noise and more overeating? Let me know in the comments below. So if you are currently struggling with binge eating, emotional eating, food obsession, constant cravings, and feeling out of control around food, I don't recommend intermittent fasting for you. First, you need to change your relationship with food, stop the restriction, overeating restriction, binge cycle, learn to cope with your emotions differently, learn to trust your body. And this is exactly what you can learn from my Outgrown workbook, From Food Struggle to Self-Leadership. I will put the link for this workbook in the description. You will also get some bonus visualizations too to help you implement what you learn. And once your foundations are in place, you can start with a shorter fasting window and increase the length of it, and listen to your body and trust your body. And when it's too long, just go back to a shorter fasting window. And if you need support with building this healthy relationship with food to stop the restrict binge cycle, decouple your mood from food, and learn to trust your body, there is a link in the description below where you can book a free discovery call with me, and then we talk about your personal issues and find a completely personalized solution for you. And in this video, I show you why once you start, you can't stop eating, which can happen during intermittent fasting. So watch this video next. See you soon.